Hey folks, Steve here with another GCACW video for you today. We are going to be doing the All Green Alike Virginia campaign. We are going to be starting with turn one, and we'll aim to get through at least the first few turns in this video. It will mean expedited play that, not everything is going to be on camera, though we'll mark out and call out significant things along the way and stop to do some check-ins as the situations develop. Now, while we will eventually be using, all the maps here, maybe less so the Stonewall Jackson's Way South map, but certainly the center map here, which is technically the Stonewall Jackson's North map, and then the Here Come the Rebels West map, which we are using to play a kind of dual theatered campaign game where there's operations in the Shenandoah Valley. There are actions around Fairfax County and Manassas Junction. Now, I did an introduction video that you may have seen prior to this one. If you want me or if you've not watched that and you like to hear about all the special rules and considerations and why all the maps and why the yarn on the map, you can watch the introduction video and kind of get caught up to speed. If you're already familiar with the scenario, then you probably already know all about all of that, and I want to get to playing here pretty quickly and not spend too much time describing things. That was all for the introduction video. I want to hit it strong here. The one thing is, on turn one, we're really only able to operate in the Shenandoah Valley, and so we're going to do that. I'm just going to move the camera up here so you can kind of see the situation. Again, the Rebel forces can't really cross this diagonal line, and the Union forces really can't cross this horizontal line for the moment, and it will only be allowed once the Rebels start to vacate and start heading towards Beauregard's forces, and there's a manpower calculation that relies on being south of this yarn line. So that's really where we're going to start off things. Now you'll notice that there are railroad station destroyed markers and also a bridge destroyed marker. There is a ferry here, but that ferry can be destroyed, so we're going to have to watch out for that along the way. What I may even do is just move this up a little bit closer and adjust the camera so we can really focus in on the situation. Now, there's a whole bunch of forces of the Union here. Patterson's army in Martinsburg. I have them in one of the off-map holding boxes. But what we'll probably be doing early is spreading out and sort of getting some coverage in the area. While the Rebels have Stewart here at, what is this, Bunker Hill. And then there are Johnston's forces proper, which include Elzey, Jackson, Bartow, and B, way down in Winchester here, just off the camera's coverage. Now, the beginning of this is going to kind of be a slow go, and it'll be interesting to see just how much the units on both sides engage with one another. But it should be a nice slow ramp up to the rest of the campaign. So just this first turn is just looking at the Shenandoah Valley situation. There's one other thing we do need to address, which is the Patterson attitude die roll. So the die roll for Patterson is going to determine if he's timid, cautious, or aggressive. I think as a Union player, I would definitely prefer him to be aggressive, but I did roll the die off camera, and he was cautious with a die roll of 4. So maybe, that's not the worst thing, but we're not going to be able to do a whole lot up here. It's mostly posturing with Patterson's forces. Really unfortunate. Now, honestly, as a solitaire game, I feel like the die roll is fine. If I were playing an opposed game, I think I would give the option to the Union player maybe to decide what Patterson's, attitude is, because it's much more exciting if he's aggressive, but it's such a low chance of it happening. But if he's aggressive, you get a bigger victory point penalty. We get a little bit of a victory point penalty for Patterson being cautious, but it's small enough, either way, where I'm thinking, well, maybe, I don't know. I think if somebody shows up at the table and really wants Patterson to be aggressive, should maybe let them have it, or maybe bump up the penalty by one more point and let them be aggressive without the die roll, because then that adds a little bit more excitement to these early phases of the campaign. What cautious is going to mean for us is that we really need to wait for Johnston to start withdrawing towards Virginia, or really Manassas Junction, to start heading south. A certain number of manpower have to leave before Patterson's forces can actually come down to Winchester. They can still operate here and kind of protect Harper's Ferry, which they will want to do, and a few other things, but they're not going to be doing much more than that. And Johnston can't even leave this area and can't go beyond the diagonal for the first 3 turns of the game. So we're sort of locked into this zone up here, generally speaking. And I don't know if there's a whole lot to be done here. I think while the rebels are there, there's certainly some incentive to move forward and maybe bang up the Union forces where they can. But I kind of want to keep Johnston's forces, near, just near here. I don't have much reason to go too far north, because then it's going to be a lot more work to bring them back down. And I want to be close to Charlestown for the pike. I want to be close to Winchester for the other pikes that will lead eventually to the needed rail stations that are going to get them run over to Manassas Junction quickly. We talked about all the mass of McDowell's forces coming from the east side of the map on turns 2 and 3, but for now we are very much locked into this situation. So in terms of the strategic thinking, I don't think the Union can do much more than to sort of advance cautiously and kind of move into a decent position where they can defend Harper's Ferry. They can be able to fight convincingly. They can advance maybe to the extent of their supply reach and just wait for the supply transfer. Eventually what's going to happen, and I don't think this is until later in the week, we will get a supply marker over here, which will sort of extend our area of operation, but we need to basically protect Harper's Ferry for that reason. That's sort of the main point, I think. So put up a good fight, hold. The rebels, by comparison, I don't know that there's much for them to do. I think they want to threaten Harper's Ferry, but again, they want to be able to swiftly start running down south just as soon as they can reasonably do so. So that's kind of the tough spot that we're in, to be honest. So I need to rock through that. We also need to determine who's going to go first. I don't believe that the scenario stipulates that. So let me figure that out, and we'll get rolling here. So in starting things off with the advanced game, we're going to follow the advanced game sequence of play. The very first thing that we're going to do each turn is do a random events phase, I believe. Yes. And I already did the die roll, and I got the perfectly average result on 2 dice of a 7, which is Confederate command paralysis, which we encountered this in an End to Innocence, where, again, basically if the rebels were to win initiative because they rolled a 6, they actually lose initiative to the Union. So that will happen twice, and then after that, command paralysis is over, at least until we roll it again. So for probably a little while on this turn 1, the Union has the ability potentially to go a little bit more often than the rebels. We'll see how the dice go. The next thing would be a Harper's Ferry check, which what will happen here is if there are units in Harper's Ferry that can't trace supply, basically, like, I think the only way they're going to be able to trace supply is kind of out of these roads and rails. Or it's not even really a supply line. It's very specifically road, pike, and railroad hexes from Harper's Ferry. And I do not believe you can count this because the bridge is destroyed, so you can't count this way, as far as I know. If you can't trace that, any units that are kind of stuck in here, let's say the rebels came up and surrounded from here to here or something, that would basically mean there's a chance that those forces in Harper's Ferry surrender, which would be a horrendous loss and even a further victory point penalty. So there's a desire, if we're going to try to defend Harper's Ferry with Union forces, that we make a strong go of it and we don't let ourselves get trapped in Harper's Ferry. But there's nobody there, so we're going to skip over that for now, but it's just worthwhile to call out that mechanic. Then we would have reinforcement phase, which right now doesn't matter because both sides aren't going to be able to get reinforcements until at least, I think for the rebels it's turn 4, and then Union on turn 5, I believe, can start rolling to get some additional reinforcements. We also have the leader transfer phase, so they can transfer from one subordinate leader to another. I'm not terribly worried about that right now, so no need to worry about that. County control phase, there's nothing that would matter there, but this is the part of the turn, at the beginning of a turn, where we would determine who controls a county, so nothing too crazy there for the moment. Supply phase, which we only do on certain turns, don't need to worry about that. And then we have the attachment phase, which is something we've not encountered yet, where in a campaign game, you can break off these substitute units, which are basically, this is a way to transfer manpower between units functionally. What it is you create a substitute unit. There are specific unit counters for this. You allot a certain number of manpower to that substitute unit, and then that unit can break off and go do other stuff. You might use it to garrison space behind you, or you're going to move that substitute unit in with another force and add its manpower to the force and sort of transfer some stuff. But it takes some time. You've got to elect to create that substitute unit now, and then later it can become integrated. I don't see a reason to do any of that right now. It might be hard for me to recognize when is a good time to create a substitute unit. But we won't worry about it too much for now, which gets us into night march determination phase, which I don't know that it makes sense to do this. We could have an attempt at a night march. Would either side want to do that, I guess, is the question. So the way this would go is, in order, the Union Potomac Army, which can't activate, so it wouldn't matter. Then the choice is given to the Confederate Shenandoah Army if they want to try to perform a night march. Players may only perform a maximum of one night march per army per game. And if you succeed at doing one, you can't do another one for the duration of the game. I don't think either of our Shenandoah forces want to do that right now. I think it's going to be more apt later when Johnston's trying to get away that he does a night march then to try to extricate himself quickly. So we're not going to try that, which leads us to, at last, the action phase and rolling off to see who gets the first initiative. I'm not going to do this for every turn, but I wanted to walk you guys through the advanced game turn because there's all these additional things that we're going to need to do each day of this 14-day campaign. Random events, potentially reinforcements, this, that, and the other. And so there's a lot more to it than just going kind of back and forth between the turns, which are just extended initiatives with some fatigue recovery in between. So we'll roll the die and we'll see who starts off. and it starts off 6-3, 6-3, with the Union going first. So what I suspect I'm going to do here is I'm going to have Patterson activate some of his own subordinate units. I need to look again for 7, 6, and 8. 6, 7, 8 on my force display can do something. So certainly Patterson and one of his subordinate divisions is going to move. I see it being a strong likelihood that, so the railroad station's destroyed, but not the bridge, that we might go 1, 2, 3, 4, however far we can go to just start getting some forces moved over. But what I'm going to do from here, guys, just so you know, like who's going first, we covered all this other stuff. I'm going to play through a few initiatives, and we'll come back and we'll see the result. And then we'll just keep playing through, okay? You won't get to see everything moving all the time, but when significant events are about to occur, you will see that described here on camera, and we'll play through it. I want to keep things moving, and I don't want this video to be super duper long for you. I want to show the results rather than everything going into each play. So let me play some, and we'll see where things stand. Okay, here we are partway through turn 1. Certainly an interesting start. The Union was able to go first and had started with Cadwallader's division starting to head towards Harper's Ferry to secure it, but they didn't have great movement roll, so they were merely just kind of projecting force into Jefferson County. When eventually the rebels were able to go, they activated Stuart, who raced off to getting some back-to-back activations and extremely high movement die rolls. He was moving 11 hexes by road in 2 activations and got to Harper's Ferry and proceeded to succeed on a die roll to destroy the ferry that was there. Now, in this scenario, 1861, all green alike, there's actually a -3 to that die roll for Confederate cavalry, or maybe it's Confederate units. But basically, it makes it very highly likely to succeed at burning ferries. It ended up being a -3 to the die roll. We rolled a 4. That was a 1. That was enough to burn the ferry. So there's a ferry burned here, and what that meant, or what that means now is, even when the supply depot moves into Sandy Hook over here, before we can really properly use it, we need the Union to repair at least the ferry, if not the bridge. So it's forcing the Union to have to kind of go and take care of that. Knowing that they were on their way on the subsequent activation, Stuart then evacuated Harper's Ferry, which is putting him at fatigue 3 back here, which is not ideal. He's going to be exhausted, but Johnson's starting to move forces up to kind of threaten, though I don't really have a good thought process as to what to do with Johnston's forces at this point. What changed the matter was that Sanford's 3rd Division, which has Patterson integrated into one of the infantry, managed to roll 6s for movement on 2 activations, and they've managed to get pretty close to Harper's Ferry. And so then the question really becomes, does Johnston try to move north and fight against Keim, which he would certainly be advantaged, and go for Martinsburg? Does he try to push maybe some of the Union into Harper's Ferry and maybe try to get them to retreat or surrender or something? Or does he hold steady right in this zone where he'll be most advantaged to leave on turn 4 and just kind of hang out and threaten and kind of float, nearby? It's really hard to say. Like, I don't know which is better at this point, or if it even makes a difference. So we kind of need to think through that. I don't have a strong inclination either way. I think we did good burning the ferries, destroying the ferries with Stuart. That was important. It kind of gives a reason for the Union to kind of hang back, force them to not, do a whole lot more in this space here. And there's only so far south they can really operate. And again, when we do the counting for supply, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 19, 20, 21, our Union's still in supply, but their supply net kind of ends right around here. So there's just going to be a lot of floating, I think, of hanging out. I don't want to exhaust any of the Union forces because we will want to be in good shape. Rushing to Harper's Ferry isn't ideal either. So we're just kind of in this weird place. It's not terribly exciting because I know where I'm going to send Johnston's forces eventually. So it's just, how much manpower do I want to spend? I don't think there's any point in trying to push Johnston's forces to fatigue 3 at any point. I don't want to exhaust them, and I don't want to put them in a weakened position to where they get caught by Patterson's forces. So it's like this delicate little dance and waiting out the rest of the situation. And it could be, we start to pass. Most of the forces on the map now have moved twice. So they're kind of at the point where, unless they want to take on being exhausted for the next turn, they don't necessarily want to move much more. Jackson and a few of the units as part of Johnston's force can still afford to move at least one more time. But where they move and how they decide to do it will kind of give away what they want to do. I could take Jackson, Elzey, and Smith and start heading, reverse course and start heading north towards Keim, and that kind of gives some things away. And it gives Patterson the opportunity maybe to just hold steady in Harper's Ferry, move Cadwallader's force over here, and kind of wait to see what happens. If we instead kind of sent them this way, that would kind of indicate where the fighting's going to be. And where I don't think the Union actually wants to engage is in the open due to the artillery advantage of the Confederates. So I think if anything were to occur, it would be the Union trying to get into these hexes. If we move them north, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we wouldn't necessarily get too far, but we would be in terrain that would kind of force the Union into a bad position in these clear hexes. But moving too far north this way takes us away from where we really need to be. So it's like there's no great option here. Trying to push very hard to take control of these counties, Berkeley and Jefferson, don't feel like they're the best options, or like there's very limited value in doing it. So we may simply let the Union come to us maybe and just pick some good spots, either in clear terrain or terrain that would benefit us, and just kind of wait to see what happens, at least until turn 4. It's really hard to figure out what to do here. But I'll keep playing through it, and we'll see what happens. Okay, we've reached the end of turn 1, if only because I just got to the point where the rebels didn't want to do much more to move any extra of the Shenandoah army would exhaust somebody, which we really want to avoid that. I need all these guys in good order so that they can swiftly get to the other side of the Blue Ridge Mountains. So didn't press them much more there. We did have Stuart exhaust himself getting in front of Charlestown, if only to be a delaying disruptor force. And, likewise, the Union kind of just got to the point where I didn't want to do much more. We did get Thomas moved up a bit more here, controlling sort of the road junction there. And then Patterson did take a brigade into Harper's Ferry itself, with the idea that while it did take him to exhaustion for an extended march to get in there, he can begin working on repairing the infrastructure in the area. And, that's reasonably important for the long haul, at least. So we're able to do that. And there just wasn't much more that anybody could accomplish. So I said, okay, I think everybody's done for the day. So there have been various recoveries performed. There's also This force and this force here have Abatis build markers. Since they didn't do anything, they just kind of sat there holding in place. They were able to begin construction of further defenses. And we're going to be going right into turn 2. I've already rolled the random event, and I got the highly likely 7 result once again, which is going to give the command paralysis on the rebels. So same constraints that we operated under turn 1, we're going to do the same thing for turn 2. And then everything else, most of these intermediary steps before the action phase don't really mean for us much on turn 2 either. So we can get right into things. And what I will call out is that, much of these restrictions here are still in place functionally. So not much is changing from that perspective. In terms of the plan for this next turn, I really don't see much reason to take Johnston's forces up any particular direction. We kind of need to float around here to leave in good order. The only thing that they could opt to try to do is maybe find a spot where the Union's going to press forward and they can kind of hang back enough to deal a lot of pain to that Union force and try to shave off some manpower for victory point purposes, only if they can convincingly do so without harming their own manpower, essentially. So there's that. For the Union, we're restricted down to this line here, but I kind of have, I guess I'll put it this way. It's tough to know what to do when I'm playing against myself. It's hard to outthink myself, and so it is for most war games where there's not that much hidden information. The die rolls kind of help keep uncertainty a big part of it. So the best thing I can do is just say, what are the primary objectives? What are my priorities for each side? For the rebels, and they're meeting this sort of goal or objective is to stay in decent shape and be well prepared to go help Beauregard when needed. And that's all I really need to do. Tie up the Union, try to remain relatively stable, and that's all I need to do. And so far, I'm doing that. For the Union, I have 2 priorities. First is secure Harper's Ferry area, because we are going to end up moving the supply depot, and I kind of need to make sure we can do that. It's not like, I don't know if it's the #1 priority, but I definitely see it as something we need to do. So we're acting in concert with that. And then the second priority is to push on the rebel position down here. And again, we can only go so far. We can at best try to target these forces for combat. And we are technically doing that. These forces have moved kind of as far south as we can reasonably expect to be able to, given the die roll movement. So, 1 brigade running off to Harper's Ferry, the rest can begin to turn this way and try to find a way to disrupt these guys. And one interesting thing is the Union can come down into this triangle slice, this pie slice right here. The Union can come over here. The rebels cannot, I don't think. So what we could do is we could have these guys swing down, begin to come down, and then try to get them caught up somewhere around here and entangle them, which would force them, to be falling back this way to get on the roads that would lead them down southeast. So, if we got better movement rolls, then the Union would be even further in concert with that goal. But so far, both sides are doing what they can reasonably do without overextending themselves and pushing too hard. So that's all goodness. This next turn is the first turn that we're going to be able to move McDowell's forces off the east side of the map. But given that none of the rebels can respond unless we get too close to them, I don't really feel like there's a strong need to get them moving right away. And in fact, I think I can actually wait until the Shenandoah theater is like all done, or as done as each side wants to go for a while, before the Union is going to say that they're going to start activating McDowell's forces. So I can kind of keep the camera focused up here and execute for a while before I start to bring on McDowell's forces. And even when I do, the fatigue levels will probably such that I don't care. Like, I can focus on what McDowell is doing for the rest of turn 2 at that point. So to start with, we'll maintain focus up here and see what we can do. But with that, I'm going to get the action cycle started. I'm going to play through some initiatives and just kind of see how things start to develop. Okay, here we are. We'll say midway or partway through turn 2, where I've kind of done all the activations in the valley that I really want to as any particular side. There's not a whole lot more I think I can achieve with either side. You can see Johnson's has his forces set out kind of in a line. The cavalry, may shift around here to kind of protect the flank, because Cadwallader's forces could try to come down and around onto Jackson, who's holding the rebel right position there. But they're kind of spread out a little bit, close enough that its neighboring brigade can support it, or at least countermarch to counterattack. But at one point I wanted to take B up and attack Negley, but the modifiers, him attacking by himself, just wouldn't be good enough. Wouldn't be good enough for what we would potentially lose, because we want to get forces back over to Manassas Junction. So very careful maneuvering. At one point we had forces up here, we pulled back. For the Union, it's really a steady advance to kind of see where we can get to. I'm trying to get the cavalry of Thomas moved over to here. I just couldn't quite get it yet, so there's kind of this gap. But if the rebels were to try to march up that way, the Union would simply sandwich them very likely and cause a bunch of trouble. So this wide open space is a trap that I can't trick myself into falling for, but that's kind of the position, just forcing the rebels into a position they have to deal with. So time continues to come down. Cadwallader is coming around the flank along with Sanford. And from here, it's just a question of turn 3 is probably going to be the most important one, because it's going to be where these guys can begin to really start to push, because Johnson's going to be able to start to leave after this next turn. So I could see Johnson's kind of retrograde movement and going down south, where the Union wants to kind of catch him if they can, or even start to march into this pie slice here and just be in a good position to chase after Johnson's position. Even in a 1-1, one brigade versus one brigade, the defender advantage kind of makes it hard for Johnson's forces to do much. So just a really tough situation, because I don't want to spend rebel manpower. We need to spend it fighting at Manassas Junction. I don't want to get into a fight that is just going to leave our forces battered and beaten and not able to provide much help. Likewise for the Union, we don't want to throw men lives away either, because we're still going to have manpower losses from the enlistments ending. So real weird sort of carrots and sticks here, that really wanting to pick the time to launch a strong attack where it makes sense. You could kind of see maybe where you could have Thomas go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then maybe have somebody else come over here and try to get off a decent attack on Jackson and see what happens, but hard to tell. From here, though, when I look at the map and see there are a couple of units that are at fatigue 1 that I could try to do something with, but their options are so limited. B can't do a whole lot by himself at the moment, that I'm happy to leave these guys be for the moment, and if nothing else happens in the Shenandoah Valley this turn, I think that's fine, which kind of brings us to the rest of the scenario, which is going to begin to unlock here, where we have this space here where the McDowell forces can start to come on. And what I'd like to do, this feels a little gamey, so I don't know how bad this is, but what I'd like to be able to do is bring them on, stay outside the range of activating or like releasing these rebel forces. Same over here. Come in just outside of that and then wait for another opportunity to go and hope for a really good set of activations where we can try to catch as many rebels at Fairfax Courthouse as possible, because they're still not allowed to move yet until we get too close. So if we can sort of spend some time marching to get into a better position, I'd like to do that and bag as many of these units as we can, because there's 7, altogether 9 manpower there. And if we were able to bag that out and really put the hurt on those units, that would advantage us a good deal. That'd be like a whole brigade to bust it up, maybe catch the cavalry and bust them up, something along those lines. The cavalry will probably get away, but I'd still like to set up something very powerful there. So what I'm going to start to do is bring those units on, and we'll see what happens with that. Okay, so here we are at the end of turn 2. I don't know, I guess I shouldn't expect the Union to be able to move very far. So the forces have entered. They each activated up to 2 fatigue, and in some cases, the formation, the division that came onto the map, wherever they end up, would be at 2 fatigue. So I couldn't do this great dramatic, encirclement of the forward rebel positions. I could kind of get a little bit far. You can see I've put Tyler's division on a more northern flank with an attempt to circle around Fairfax Courthouse, with Palmer being our scout ahead. I intend for our cavalry to basically cause retreat issues for those units in Fairfax Courthouse. So I would like to activate them, get them in between Bull Run, and just make it harder for them to get away as the Union wave kind of comes down. Whatever units we can hurt, however badly, before they can get across the river line would be ideal, because really, in the local area, Beauregard has Longstreet with them. Early and Jones are here with decent-sized brigades. There is one here, decent strength, one here, decent strength, one in there, decent strength, and then Evans is a bit weaker up there. So, I mean, once each of those brigades, all of like 5 or 4, 5, or 6 manpower, get behind the river, it's going to be tough, and we know that from the battle that we played before. So if I can get fortunate enough to lock down some of these units and just rip them up before they get over the river, we're going to be in such a better position later. My only caution here was, and why I didn't push further, is that if I were to push any of these Union divisions to 3 fatigue, that's a 50-50 chance of becoming disorganized, and would eventually probably lead to a much greater likelihood of taking manpower losses from extended march, and I don't want to do that. And maybe I'm playing into maybe a too conservative of an approach with the Union forces. I want them to be in good fighting order. I don't want them to become overworked to bag some of these guys, because what it could be, I could try to push to fatigue 3 or 4, but if I roll 1s, I'm not even going to be able to really do the attacks that I want to do. So at this point, I'm going to have to leave it to the turn 3 dice to decide, do we catch any of these guys or not. I'm kind of threatening a wider progression here with this division to maybe snake out through the trees. That is maybe ill-advised, so I'm not sure how I really want to go, but there's enough roads kind of through here that if I wanted to just go, swing up through here and make progress, I could do that without trying some, dire down the road run. And I'm not even sure what good that does me to try to do that. So, does it make sense to cross at Cedar Run and then try to run down south? I don't know. I assume there's a good reason not to try to do that. If only because it puts us really far and away from our support if we try to do that with some of our forces. So I don't know, just sort of playing it out, seeing where we get to. That was turn 2 effectively. Uh, and yeah, again, I didn't want to push those divisions too hard. I want to keep the Union in good fighting shape because they're going to need every bit they can when it comes to actually duking it out. So yeah, I should also point out that Patterson did succeed in repairing the ferry. So there's it's a pretty good wide margin to repair a ferry, but because it's over a major river, there's a penalty to the die roll. Fortunately, we rolled the best result we could get and succeeded in repairing the ferry. So I don't have much concern about the supply in the Shenandoah Valley situation developing as that shifts over. Um, so not terribly worried, though the Union is kind of at the extent of their supply lines over in that theater. So going into turn 3, a lot of possibilities here. I'm going to go ahead and roll the random event for the turn. And this time we get a 6, so not a 7 like we've been getting. And let's see what that is. Richardson replaces Miles. Okay, so I need to look at that. If this result occurs, the Union player flips the Miles division leader counter to Richardson's side. The Richardson brigade counter is replaced with the McConnell brigade counter, and Richard remains in command of the 5th Division for the rest of the game. Okay, so Miles, who's not terribly good, let's see, he flips to Richardson, who is better. That's good. Yeah, that's fantastic. I'm all about it. And then the Richardson brigade counter, which I actually need to go look to see where that counter is. Because I disrupt all of my units on the map. I guess I could look in my setup here. Where is Richardson? Richardson is okay. So he is part of the 5th. All right, hold on, guys. I'm getting goofed up here. Okay. He's part of Tyler's division. That's why I was confused. So he is replaced with McConnell, which is a wash from that perspective. So Richardson being a 0-1, so he's got artillery but no tactical bonus, is replaced with McConnell, who is basically just as good. All right. Well, so that was good for the Union, certainly. And so now one of our division leaders doesn't suck so much, which is a good thing to point out that in terms of the leader bonuses, Beauregard has a 2 on attack, 1 on defense, I believe, that he can provide a bonus. And pretty much every leader on the Union side has a +1 tactical rating that can kind of cover for some of the fact that the brigades tend to not have a very good bonus. So that's good for the Union, certainly, and we'll make use of that. The Harper's Ferry phase doesn't have anything happen. Reinforcements, those are going to start to be a factor next turn, but not this one. Leader transfer, I don't necessarily see much to do there, though. What I probably need to look at is whether or not Beauregard can transfer, and if he does transfer, where would he go? So probably before I get rolling, I'll make some determination about Beauregard to see if it makes sense for him to change where he's at. Otherwise, the county control phase doesn't much matter. The supply phase we're not counting yet because it's only July 17th. and we would then be getting into the action cycle. I don't think either side is really concerned about a night march yet. It it would be. I'll put it this way. I think there's a very reasonable choice here for the Potomac forces of the Union to try to do a night march, because if we got the night march, that would enable us to get even closer to the enemy positions. And then if we got lucky and got to activate at the end of the night marches, that's probably when we would bag these guys. So what I'll do, I'm going to go look at the night march rules some more and think through what I want to do. I'm also going to look at the later transfer. And then I'll start playing through turn 3 and probably end up showing the total aftermath of turn 3 here very shortly. On my end, for you, should just be a second. Okay, so I've gone ahead and played through all of turn 3, the rest of turn 3, all of turn 3. There were certainly moments where I probably should have stopped and explained what was going on, but boy, I just had momentum going, and I wanted to keep going. I'll firstly say there were some mistakes made by both sides. Maybe one catastrophically worse than the other, but we'll see. I think the big mistake as the Rebels was that I had this line set up here. We couldn't go past that diagonal cut, but I was probably sitting far, far, far too forward, and in fact, I should have maybe even pulled back to this little area back here, which I think I could have done, and not really have lost anything. So the idea of defending up front was, if there presented itself a really good opportunity to pounce on some Union forces and maybe surround them and cause havoc, maybe we would try to do that, but not be in a position where we could too easily be intercepted down the line as we moved forward. And that ended up being very bad because the Union managed to absolutely smash Jackson's brigade very, very badly. They were able to, over the course of a couple activations, though it brought Cadwalader's division to utter exhaustion, they managed to steal a march on Jackson and then proceeded with a flank attack. They used all their movement to get kind of on and around Jackson right there. And then, they were kind of risking, well, what if the rebels go, well, Jackson will try to extricate himself, though he'll become disorganized, and that's still pretty good. But instead, they got the back-to-back activation, and they launched a flank attack, which was pretty darn good. It was really good die rolls for the Union on that one, and it forced, just straight up, Jackson to lose 3 manpower, 2 on the combat, another one on the retreat, which was scoring some morale points against the rebels there in the Shenandoah. And then later, a follow-up attack, though it cost more fatigue, is they were able to hit that demoralized force that only had 2 manpower. He took another manpower loss, was able to retreat cleanly because we just couldn't get him wrapped up again. But he's sitting back here, Jackson is, with 1 manpower, disorganized and demoralized, and he's effectively a non-entity at this point. He got trashed so badly that at this point, just keeping his unit alive with 1 manpower is going to be interesting to see. In response to that, Johnston slowly pulled back his forces, defending Jackson to keep him from being totally eliminated, and basically trying to get in a good position to just retreat off the map here soon. There was a restriction in just how far they could pull back. Again, that diagonal line, there's like a little bit of space they could pull back to, but without further exhausting themselves, they pulled back to this terrain where the terrain's really kind of choppy. And since turn 3 is now effectively over, I've taken that diagonal yarn off the map, and basically, next turn, Johnston's going to be free to pick whatever path he wants to get down to the railroad and get to Manassas Junction if he so chooses. And then this horizontal line, which is still here, this first one, the Union can't cross it. because Patterson is not aggressive. And in fact, Patterson's hanging out at Harper's Ferry, holding down the fort while these divisions are operating. So it kind of sucks. They're just going to hang out up here. That's all they can do. We can't even really attack Winchester until Johnston's pulled south of this second line, which kind of means like whatever action was really going to happen in the Shenandoah Valley theater has kind of already happened. Now, the mistake that the Union may have made, now that we've kind of talked about how bad things got for the rebels in the valley, was that I managed to do night marches with both Union armies. That night march helped get into a better position to attack Jackson, so that helped contribute to the getting close to him and then getting a couple of back-to-back activations to wallop him. Which, I mean, you figure we just put 4 to 5 manpower out of the equation for the whole campaign. That's pretty darn good. They're pulling back, right? But the problem is, once you execute a night turn, you can't do another one. So Shenandoah Valley, that was probably a good time to do it, and whack Jackson. That's worth it, right? We used our one shot and we got lucky, and we managed to shut down a rebel brigade. Fantastic. Over in the Manassas area, we also did a night march, which was kind of hedging the bet that somewhere, somehow, I would catch the rebels and hit them. Unfortunately, while the night marches, got us closer to the Fairfax courthouse, and the hope was to bag some more rebels, just due to the sort of interplay of activations and where they were needed, eventually the rebels got a bunch of back-to-back activations, and our hope to catch a second rebel force somewhere really just failed. And so I feel like I effectively wasted the one night march for the Potomac Theater, and that sucks. We probably could have used it later to better effect, and I got greedy and I missed it. We just didn't get our chance. So you can see that Tyler is kind of heading a much further circuit. Hunter's taking up a center, Richardson up a center, and Heitzelman is covering the left flank. And there's just a steady march forward right now. We've not really seen much. There's a few bits of cavalry retreats and stuff, which has caused them to be exhausted here. But generally, all the other forces of Beauregard have been able to, move in good order, not overextending themselves, but delicately moving closer to the river. The objective to get across one of the river fords and then begin to entrench. And so they're working to do that. So now it's just a matter of how far can the Union get marching to try to one, get close enough that these guys are kind of stuck on the river, and then again, like we did at the battle scenario that we played previously, try to get some of these brigades out around in Prince William County, around the river, over the creeks, and then kind of, again, hoping to keep Johnston from making a connection with the rest of the rebel forces. So in terms of the Union, I think the Union's feeling good for hitting Jackson as hard as we did. That was nice, like that. And we didn't really lose anything for it either. The die rolls were good enough that besides being exhausted, we've managed to avoid losing manpower. We've even managed to avoid getting disorganized on the extended march table, which is pretty fortunate because there's a +2 die roll to that for the Union in this scenario. Collectively, like all the modifiers together is a +2. And I was really expecting someone to become disorganized and start to lose manpower, but it never came up. I was rolling 1s and 2s the whole time for the extended march checks. So the Union's feeling pretty good about that. I mean, that just went about as good as we could ever hope for it to go in the Shenandoah Valley for this campaign. Here, we lost our night march, and we're not really any further along than the historical situation was. The rebels have managed to slip away, which is generally bad. So I feel like the Union is feeling medium confidence. If they can keep pressure up where they can keep the armies divided. They can try to make ground against Beauregard. the potential's still there. It's and it's better maybe than history so far. The rebels, by comparison, it does suck what happened to Jackson. I think we've still got the ability to get down to help, but it is going to take some time, a couple days at least, to get down there. Um, and Beauregard is feeling okay because he is getting his forces over the river, not necessarily feeling too much pain there. We've still got some maneuvers to make to try to get like best the best setup we could hope to get, and we'll have that in place in a couple of days. What he wants to do is pull Bonham back to here, so then we're covering crossings here, here, and here. Cock is also covering that crossing there. Early is covering this crossing. We're going to move Longstreet up to here. We're going to pull Evans down around here. What we might do is we might try to pull Evans here and then Longstreet here. Have the stronger brigade on the farthest flank. And then, and since there's only really one good hex to attack this hex from, it's okay to have Evans there potentially. And we'll put reinforcements with Evans as we can. And then what I would want to do is pull the cavalry out to here, this area, and kind of keep the flank from being turned. So that's kind of like what I'm thinking. But if the Union can get between the armies again, I mean, that's what everything hinges on that. Then these guys could be in trouble. And if the river line can be circumvented, then the pain just keeps increasing from there. So anyway, that's it for turn 3, and that's going to be it for this video. It took a few days to get this put together. So turns 1 through 3 of the Virginia campaign scenario. We still have, 8, 9, 10, 11 turns to go. So we are only in the very first phases. This feels like a good cutoff point because now Johnston is free to head as far south as he wants to, and he'll certainly be doing that. And now all the units, all the major units are on the map and maneuvering. So we're really in the thick of things now. It's the end of the beginning, but not the beginning of the end. And we'll see how it goes. So hope this has been enjoyable and informative or interesting. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. We'll see you in the next one, guys. Until then, take care. Keep on gaming.